Here's the story of 2020, a year for us to finally live in sync. So many things that need our understanding. It's time for us to think. It's the story of fellow humans who were busy with lives of their own, but they thought of bringing us together, and we can watch from home. We can all make this world much better. It's about what we're willing to confront. So sit back and enjoy the conversation of these rainbow warriors called the Queer Bunch.
The Queer Bunch, the Queer Bunch. It's a great day to watch the Queer Bunch.
Hello, Queer Bunch. I am your host, Kero Saleib, and I'm feeling the vibes with today's episode. Today, we'll be talking about the new normal and its challenges when it comes to COVID-19. First, let's check in with our co-hosts. Hello, my queer family. How have you all been doing since we recorded our premiere episode?
I'm doing good.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that, Alphonso. That's so
We're
good.
doing as best as we can in the new normal.
The new normal.
Good. Alphonso, who else? How are the co-hosts? Come on. What are you guys doing?
Everything is fantastic. I really loved the reception of the first episode. We got a lot of fantastic comments and 6,650 views, I believe. That's pretty good. Okay. Well, our other co-hosts, take it away.
I'm doing good. I am worried about the schools opening in a couple weeks.
Fair enough.
Totally understandable.
Really worried about that. I don't think they're ready for that. So, but otherwise, yeah, I'm teaching and taking care of my dog, taking care of my mom. You know, she's doing good, 90 years old, and you know.
Wow.
Goodness, thank goodness.
That's awesome.
Good daughter. Viviana.
Wow. I guess I'm doing, you know, I think today's topic is going to be very interesting for me because, you know, this topic has hit me directly because I have lost people to this topic that we're going to be discussing today. So I would like to say I'm doing good, I'm doing great, but unfortunately, I'm just like a lot of people, I'm just handling there, I guess surviving, but I'm very looking forward to.
Thank you for that honest answer. We want ourselves to say and feel that we're doing great, but it's been hard. It's been hard on everybody. Yeah,
It's been very hard.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of challenges, and and thank you for that, Viviana. And as I had mentioned in the beginning of the show, today we will be tackling the topic of challenges that the community faces when it comes to these new normals that are in place pertaining to COVID-19. So, we want to take a look at what does it mean for homeless to LGBTQ plus folk. We'll also be talking about the eviction bill that has been passed in several provinces across Canada and the impacts that it has on the queer community. Now, these two amazing guests that we have today are no strangers at all to the current situation that the queer community is facing when it comes to those topics. And they have been actively speaking about it very loudly. So let's meet these two incredible humans. First, we have Dr. Jill Andrew. She is the MPP of Toronto's St. Paul's with the NDP party. NDP party, that was redundant, but everyone gets it. Now, Jill serves as the Ontario NDP culture critic and women's issues critic for the official opposition. Jill is also a member of the Ontario NDP Black Caucus, a first of its kind in Ontario legislative history. Jill also sits on the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. She's the first Black and queer person to be elected to the Ontario legislature and reportedly in Canada. Outside of politics, Jill is also co-founder of Body Confidence Canada and is award-winning educator and former colonist equity and body image advocate, speaker, and writer. She is the community co-owner of Glad Day Bookshop, the world's oldest LGBTQ plus bookstore, and has been an avid volunteer and donor supporting organizations across the GTA that prioritize Black and racialized communities, youth, women, the arts, LGBTQ2 plus communities, and chronic health advocacy, among others. This is only 1/10 of her incredible accomplishments. Jill, it is so nice to see you and to have you as a guest on our show.
Kero, it is very good to see you, and thank you for inviting me. It's wonderful to see all your faces. And, you know, Viviana, I just wanted to say thank you as well for your honesty and your transparency. You know, we're kind of always socialized to, you know, buck up and, you know, we're fine. But I think during this time, there's a lot to be said about, you know, being honest and being open and just sort of saying, hey, you know, this is where I'm at. And just know that you are not alone. I don't think there's any of us on this panel who haven't had some proximity to this pandemic, and some days are just not as good as other days.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jill. And honestly, we can't wait to hear what you have to say. And now our next guest is someone that I have had the honor of meeting just today for the first time, and I've heard incredible things about him. Dr. Alex Abramovich. Alex, did I say that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, just making sure. Should have probably asked you that before recording. So Dr. Abramovich,
bad co-producer.
Dr. Abramovich is a scientist at the Institute for Mental Health Policy Research at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, also known as CAMH, and an assistant professor at the Dalai Lama School of Public Health, University of Toronto. He has been addressing the issue of LGBTQ2S youth homelessness for close to 15 years. He's an award-winning, internationally recognized leader in the area. His program of research focuses on preventing, reducing, and ending LGBTQ2S youth homelessness in Canada and addressing issues regarding transgender health. His research has led to groundbreaking practice and policy reform, including the launch of Canada's first transitional housing program for LGBTQ2S youth. He has worked closely with all levels of government to develop policies and strategies that address the needs of the LGBTQ2S youth experiencing homelessness. Alex, you speak to my heart with the work that you do. I have experienced homelessness myself, and knowing what I know about you today, your work has proven to be critical more than ever, and especially during this pandemic. Alex, how have you been doing?
Wow. First of all, thank you so much for the invite to be part of this awesome show. And just so great to be around so many amazing people. I mean, we're not in the same room, but it feels like we are, which is a really good feeling, especially, you know, during this pandemic when I think, you know, many of us are feeling actually very isolated and quite alone. Yeah, I mean, I'm doing well. I'm very excited about this. And just like everyone here, you know, it's definitely been challenging. There's been many different challenges that the pandemic has brought all of us in different ways, which we're going to speak about very soon.
Excellent.
You guys don't hold on, Kero. I was saying to Dr. Abramovich before the show, Jill, did you know that you both are recipients of the Person of the Year of the Inspire Awards?
Oh my goodness! Well, look at that. I'm in
So you got something in common.
Yes.
So, all right, Kero.
It's so awesome to have you both here today, and Alex, thank you for sharing that and being part. Like both of you, I know you both are super busy, and we can't thank you both enough. And our viewers at home watching today, you are tuning in one heck of an amazing show today. So let's take a short break, and when we come back, our co-host will be asking our guests some very important questions.
I'm making sanitizer sensual.
I can have sex with my own husband.
What? I'm doing a nightly review for the Gardner Construction Boys.
I am flattening that curve, honey. Ugh, tighter. Oh, tighter. Ugh. Hello?
Namaste. Raju.
Hey, yeah. Just getting ready for our date.
Me too. Are you excited for tonight?
Yeah. Do you know what undetectable means?
Yeah. It means you're positive, and there's no way I can get HIV when we have sex. Times have changed, eh?
Yeah, times have changed. I'm positive and undetectable.
Thanks for letting me know.
Welcome back, folks. Dr. Andrew and Dr. Abramovich, are you ready for our questions?
Absolutely. And you can call me Jill.
Yes, please call me Alex as well.
Oh, come on. You worked hard for the titles.
Today, so.
I know Kero's going to throw me to the lion's den first.
But no, let's do this. Let's ask our questions and co-host, take it away.
Okay, I'll get going. First, I want to say I'm really not a fan of the term new normal. It sounds like we're giving in. I think we can learn great lessons from what we're going through as humanity, but I'd like us to do better and be better as we progress forward, learning those lessons. So hello again, welcome to the show. My first question can be answered probably more by Jill, but if you have anything to add to it, Alex. COVID-19 has had a huge impact on the LGBT community in many aspects, but let's address the eviction bill that was passed recently. Can you speak of the impact and what have you seen so far? Also, any resources available, maybe?
Definitely. So I'll try to keep it concise. I mean, Bill 184 is a bill that essentially makes a whole lot easier for landlords to evict people during an unprecedented pandemic. And what we know is COVID-19 has already disproportionately impacted, you know, POCs, Black folk, Indigenous folk, 2S LGBTQ plus folk, disabled folk, folk who are on ODSP, OW. So what we know is that rent, which is usually someone's biggest monthly expense, has been something that people have been struggling with since the beginning of this pandemic. And what Bill 184 did, rather than offer rent relief or offer rent control or offer to freeze rent fees or to freeze utility fees, which are all the things that the NDP official opposition that we were all standing up for every day for our communities, this bill makes it easier for folks to get evicted. So essentially it makes it easier for folks to lose their home. It makes it easier,
wow.
You know, for instance, let's say you are, you know, coaxed into signing a rent repayment agreement and you miss a payment, you know, all of a sudden your landlord has an opportunity to get rid of you without a landlord tenants board hearing. And I want to be very clear, you know, when tenants get help, landlords get help. When landlords get help, tenants get help. And, you know, rather than pitting the two against each other, you know, what Doug Ford should have done from the get-go, he should have had a provincial plan that supported landlords and tenants. Yeah. You know, sort of a federal opt-in plan where, you know, small business owners, you know, are crossing their fingers and hoping that their landlords, you know, offer them relief. Not good enough. You know, only 1% of business owners said yes to opt into that sort of support. So, you know, coming back to the question around Bill 184, this is not a bill that helped make our community stronger. It's not a bill that helped make our small businesses stronger. What we needed was direct funding, direct support to residents and to small and medium-sized business owners. I don't even have to begin to talk about, you know, our village and what's happened in our church village. I don't have to begin to talk about what's happened in Little Jamaica, you know, in my community. It's been devastating across the board. And to end on a highlight, though, to end on a high note, you were asking about advocacy. The one, I would say, if you have a tenants association in your building or in your community, that is a great way to bring people together to collectively advocate. And if you don't know how to create a tenants association, or you don't know the first thing about fighting for your rights as a tenant, which is totally fine, because I mean, many people have to learn to learn. Like, you got to know to learn, right? You can always reach out to Acorn Toronto. You know, Acorn Toronto, an excellent organization standing up for and helping people learn how to form tenants associations and how to advocate, how to have their voices heard. So all that to say, Bill 184 has passed. It has received royal assent. Of course, we're asking for a repeal of that bill, because what we fear is we are going to see a mass exodus of folks being pushed out of their homes into essentially homelessness. So really,
how does that help anybody?
You know what? It helps no one. It really doesn't help anyone. What we need in our city of Toronto, what we need in our province, is real affordable housing. That is what we need, real affordable housing. And you know, as that is being developed, we need to have more funding for our shelters. You know, we need more harm reduction sites. You know,
we do. Amen to that.
The community infrastructure that allows us to survive during a pandemic, you know, during ridiculous construction like what's happening with the Eglinton construction, the Eglinton Crosstown. So there's a whole lot going on, and I know it's really easy for us to feel, frankly, terrible and hopeless, but in my
opinion, that's what it feels like.
That's exactly what I believe the government wants us to feel in this province, and that's what we can't. We can't. We need to remain motivated. We need
work together.
We need to be motivated, organize, and hold them accountable.
Alex, before we move to the host to ask the questions, anything you want to add on the topic?
I mean, that was a great answer. I just want to, Jill's point about, you know, it really comes down to the fact that we need affordable housing, and that I 100% agree with. That is what it comes down to. How many, you know, LGBTQ2S folks do not have safe housing, and that is the issue, you know, that we're dealing with here, is that people don't have a safe place to call home, and they don't have a safe place to call home for many different reasons. But ultimately, it comes down to the fact that we do not have affordable housing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you thank you to both of you so much. The information you just gave is it's disheartening, but yet eye-opening at the same time. And our viewers, I'm sure, could relate to a lot of what you both said. And just by both of you saying what you just said, a lot of our viewers are going to feel heard. So thank you for that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah. So I know Ticha had a question.
Yes, hello, Jill and Alex. And Jill, I found your op-ed, Ontario Needs a Feminist Recovery Plan from COVID-19 in the Now magazine, very compelling. And you also said on Facebook, women, especially Black, women of color, and low-income women have shouldered the majority of the burden of COVID-19, which is why our recovery must be intersectional. Now, can you say more about this, and how does it relate to the queer intersect? And also, I really would love to hear from Alex on how he thinks, on how you think it impacts the mental health of these folks and also our community.
Thank you so much, Ticha, and thank you as well for your work. You know, thank you for your work that you do around sustainable shelters, and you're such an advocate for folks being able to live safely and in place. And I know that affordable housing, I know that housing, period, is near and dear to your heart. So first off, I just want to give a shout out to the authors. I mean, we had Anjum Sultana, and we also have, well, we didn't have, but the co-author is Carmina Ravenera from the YWCA, and also from the Gender and Economy Institute. They wrote the report called A Feminist Economic Recovery Plan for Canada, Making the Economy Work for Everyone. And I just wanted to give them credit for that report, because quite frankly, they inspired the op-ed. And really all I was trying to say in that op-ed is we need an intersectional feminist gender equity, recovery plan. You know, we need a recovery plan that centers the most marginalized voices. You know, we know that this pandemic has disproportionately impacted, as I said earlier, Black and Indigenous communities. But those communities also include our very own communities within the 2S LGBTQ plus space. Because from what I've heard, you know, there are many young people, there are many people, there are many seniors, for goodness sakes, living in intergenerational homes who essentially go back into the closet during COVID. Because let's stop and realize, you know, quarantine at home, stay home, stay safe. All of these narratives that were initially, you know, the dominant narrative during COVID, you know, a lot of folks didn't stop to realize that home wasn't a safe space for many, right? You know, and what happens when you're in a space where you feel locked, where you feel you can't be yourself, when you feel isolated, when you're removed from those social connections, you know, the places like the village, you know, the restaurants, the patios, the community spaces that allow you to feel like who you really are. Social isolation and depression, you know, and then we spiral into a conversation on the $330 million that the Ford government cut from mental health services last year. And I certainly did $330 million reinstalled during COVID for mental health or addictions, right? So what I mean by a gender equity strategy is that, yes, women have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. They have been the essential workers. They are our educators. They have been the frontline face of healthcare, of PSWs, of convenience stores. You know, I can go on and on, you know, but some of those women are queer. Some of those women are trans. Some of those women are two-spirited. And we have to center those voices. And in order to center those voices, we have to have policies and bills and motions created within the legislature of Ontario, you know, that recognizes that those same policies disproportionately and differently impact those who are vulnerable, those who have been historically marginalized.
Yeah, and I think it also adds layers. Like each intersect that adds a layer of.
It absolutely does.
Yeah. Dr. Abramovich, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that prior to COVID, we already knew that LGBTQ2S folks experienced like higher rates of mental health issues, including depression, anxiety, suicidality, and that many of these issues are even more pronounced for youth, and in particular, trans youth of color. And so I think it's very important to acknowledge that the experiences that we're talking about are not the same for all LGBTQ2S people, right? So we all have different experiences, and depending on your identity, you know, depending on intersectionality, you're going to have different experiences. So for example, a young Indigenous trans person is going to have a very different experience trying to access support in the shelter system than a white gay man, for example, right? So I think it's very, very important to acknowledge that, and to understand that now with COVID, the impact is also going to be very different within the population, right? And so we know that, like, you know, since COVID, the mental health issues that were already a problem prior to COVID are even more exacerbated now, right? And so, for example, if we're thinking about young trans people, many of the young trans people that I work with, they have had their medical appointments canceled because of COVID. They have had transition-related surgeries canceled because of COVID. And so you can only imagine what that would do to a person's mental health. And so that's something that people are dealing with right now. And unfortunately, a lot of the research that has already been conducted, there's a lot of research already going on looking at how has COVID impacted different populations. Well, unfortunately, many of the surveys that we have in place in Canada, many of the statistics, StatsCan surveys in place, many of the administrative health surveys, they do not include questions about gender identity or sexual orientation. So a lot of those surveys will look at your health card and they will define you as either male or female, and that is how they report their results. And so trans people are erased. We are erased, and we're not included. And, you know, looking at LGBTQ2S folks like that. So what I'm trying to say is that we still don't know, actually, really, what is the impact of COVID on the health of queer and trans people? We do not know. And, but within time, we will know with more research, and when, you know, more healthcare providers get on board, the government, when they start to include these questions, then we can actually start to identify LGBTQ people.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Abramovich, for your answer on this, and Jill. Alphonso.
My question is for Alex. My husband and I, we do a lot of work with HIV positive people, and we run a Facebook group called Pause Planet. And in our own kind of way, we kind of counsel for people who ask questions. But I was wondering, what would your advice be for like perhaps a single HIV positive person who might be slipping into depression because of COVID and the situations going on right now?
Yeah, that's a very important question and a difficult question to answer, actually. You know, I mean, no, it's important. We have to talk about this stuff, right? So thank you for your question. I mean, I think that when you ask the question, the first thing that I think about is physical distancing and what physical distancing is doing to people, right? And especially the person that you're describing, for example, in your question. And for a lot of people, we have relied on services that we know are safe. So I think that's the issue for, especially for trans people, is that it's very hard to know like which services are going to be safe, the ones that you access. So when you find a service, a support worker that you know is someone who's safe and who's inclusive and is going to actually respect who you are, then that's the person you're going to want to go and see. You're going to want to make an appointment and go and see that person. You want to be with that person in person, you know? And I think that is a huge issue as to what you're describing, that people, we can't do that anymore. And so somebody who's really struggling and experiencing mental health issues right now, and just, I think it's the physical issues that people need to be able to access the services that they know help them, and need to be around people that they know are supportive. And so I think that, you know, that is a huge problem. And I think that is affecting many people's mental health. But I mean, in terms of what advice I would provide is that, you know, I agree that it's very, very difficult to not be able to go and access the places that we know help us. But on the other side, there are so many amazing resources online today, and not just resources, something that you click and you go and you sort of like read it on your own, but there are forums and there are actual communities available online, and especially for LGBTQ2S people. And I think that is so incredible, is how the community comes together. Sometimes it just takes a little digging around and actually opening up to people to try to get referred and figure out where those spaces are. But those spaces are available online. And I know that for sure, that those spaces are there, and they're there in many different ways. Like even on YouTube, you know, there's a whole community for trans folks of people sharing their experiences on video, and you can create this community, and you don't have to be in the same country. You don't have to be in the same, you know, in the same place, but you could actually get a lot of support in that way. So I think that there is support available, you know, and I think that people really need to be able to hold on to that and find a place that feels right for them through these different resources online.
Dr. Abramovich, I would love for you to email me those resources so we could post them up in the description when the video goes up. That would be fantastic. Now, so far we've asked questions about the current impacts, so we're able to address the foundation of the discussions we're having together. That being said, Viviana.
Yeah, you know, I'm actually kind of speechless because I'm actually hearing all this information, and to be quite honest, it's the first time that I heard two individuals talking so much about the trans community, which gives me so much of a good feeling that we are being recognized, that we are being acknowledged, because I'm sick and tired of not being recognized when we're like here in front of you. But just to move with the conversation, because this is very important, I guess, to me, to the community, is like, I would like, you know, like from you, from your perspective, what is the definition of the new normal when it comes to our queer community? And there's another group that we don't talk too much beside the trans community, is the sex workers. Because we haven't talked about this. And I would like to hear from you two, like, what is your conception about this new normal?
That is a huge question. You know, the first thing I would say is off the top, sex workers are workers, and sex workers deserve workers' rights. Sex workers deserve dignity and respect, and what they do not deserve is to be criminalized. or to be ignored or shoved away like some little secret or some little stigma. That's the first thing right off the block. And, you know, when we think about a feminist, a feminist intersectional gender equity strategy, when we think of a feminist recovery, that has to include sex workers.
Yes.
We must. They're our next neighbors. They're our next door neighbors. They're in our community. They're our friends, for goodness sakes. Some of them are family members. These are people. These are people. And, you know, if we're not advocating for sex workers, you know, if we are remaining silent, you know, then we are also not amplifying the need to address gender-based violence. And, you know, we know that the criminalization of sex workers and gender-based violence, for goodness sake, and violence against women, against everyone, you know, that is exacerbated. And when we live in a society where people are meant to feel ashamed of themselves or ashamed of their profession or feel unprotected or like they don't have access to rights, that itself places them in more violent situations. That itself makes them feel stuck and unable to get out of situations that may be unhealthy. So that's the first thing I just wanted to say off the bat. You know, in terms of this new normal, I mean, the reality is the old normal wasn't working for a lot of folks. It absolutely wasn't working for a lot of folks. So what we need now is better. We need a whole new reimagined post-COVID reality, one that centers equity, you know, one that recognizes whose voices aren't in the conversation.
Yeah.
You know? Whose voices aren't in the conversation? Are sex workers' voices in the conversation? Are trans people's voices in the conversation? You know, are renters' voices in the conversation? You know, are seniors' voices in the conversation? And not just in the conversation, but are they at the table? You know, do they have the ear of the premier? You know, do they have the ear, you know, of the various ministers in the cabinet? And I would say that at this moment, no. At this moment, no. So we have to work together collectively, you know, across community lines, and one would argue maybe even across political lines as well, to address, you know, the deterioration of society as we know it, based on this COVID-19, but also based, you know, on a very lackluster response by the province where housing was concerned, you know, where healthcare was concerned, where we saw, you know, thousands of seniors, you know, die. It didn't have to be this way. It didn't have to be this way. PSWs, you know, healthcare workers pleading for N95 masks to keep them alive. You know, over 6,000 healthcare workers sick from COVID-19. Many, you know, of whom, as we know, passed. You know, a good few of them passed. It didn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Dr. Andrew. Yeah, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent answer, Jill. Like, you really covered it very, very well. And I want to just reiterate that, yes, sex work is work, period. And that sex workers deserve the same rights as everyone else, period. And I think that is, I mean, for me, obviously for Jill, that's just, that just makes sense. Unfortunately, that is not how everyone understands it to be, right? And I mean, for me, it's been nearly 15 years now that I've been working with, my work focuses on LGBTQ2S youth who are experiencing homelessness, right? And so the issue around like sex work comes up a lot, and it's around stigma, like so much stigma and so much shame. And so many of the young people who I work with, they just, so, you know, they feel so much shame and so much stigma that it's very hard for them to open up and to talk about their needs, talk about their experiences in an honest way. And I think that is very, very sad. That really honestly breaks my heart every time I interact with youth and this happens. And I just wish that the situation were better, where that, you know, where they could have their needs addressed and they could openly go to a healthcare provider and talk about sex work and talk about the, you know, their needs and their experiences, and not be feel so much shame and so much stigma. And I just have to hope that the situation is going to change and that it will improve for the people who I work with. And, you know, in terms of this question around new normal, I mean, that's a tough question because I don't think that we have a new normal yet. I feel like we're still in it. You know, I feel like the old normal, it wasn't normal. It wasn't good. It wasn't working out. It was really, really not a good situation for way too many of us. And I feel like we don't have a new normal yet. It just feels like we're still in the thick of it, you know, but I do believe that things are going to improve. I really do believe that once we get to a space where there is a new normal, there's no way that we can go back to the way it was. There's just no way, you know, that it's not possible to go back to what it was. But I do think that right now, so many things are coming to light, and so many voices that were silenced are now much louder and more pronounced and are starting to be heard. And that is what is going to create our new normal.
Thank you for that, Dr. Abramovich.
I'm gonna step in, Kero, for a second. I'm just thinking, just a thought in my head when you, Jill and Alex is speaking. We're all passionate people on this screen, and I love the what we're saying. But are we going to do something about changing it? Is it just going to be like we hope we're going to change? We're going to come together. We're going to change, but nothing happens after. I guess we need to really kick in the behind to actually get up and actually work together to do things.
Can I? Yeah. I'm sorry for jumping in, but literally, I just got off of a call earlier today with Kristen Wang Tom and a bunch of people from the community. So there is talk about COVID relief. And people are talking, and Viviana throughout that entire 2-hour conversation. So things are happening, and people are talking and trying to come up with plans and ideas. So it is happening, and it's not going, this isn't just lip service. We are actually trying to get stuff.
I
can say something. Yeah.
I would just add it very, very quickly. And this comes from the bottom of my heart. Long-term change will happen when we boot out Doug Ford in 2022, and when the Ontario NDP is at the head of the Pro for the Better, even as opposition. That said, we're going back into the legislature on September 14th. We are going back, tabling legislation, tabling motions, tabling ideas that we know are necessary, bills, in order to make life a little easier for others. So please know that you are so right. Conversations, reports, research, I am Black, I am queer, these things are important, but we know what happens. They end up on the shelf with dust on them, and 2 years later we pull off the same report and we're talking about the same stats. So what we need is legislation. We need to legislate equity. We need to legislate issues so that they are dealt with head on, like poverty, like food insecurity, like housing, like police brutality, for goodness sakes. We have to address all of these pieces that disproportionately impact pretty much everyone on this call.
Thank you so much. I'd like to move the conversation ahead just because we're running out of time.
I do want to mention something, Kero, though, before you close off. And Jill, I don't want to close the show without saying this. I want to talk about businesses. We don't have to answer that. We don't have the time, but as someone who works in media, I hear a lot from LGBTQ2S+ businesses and allies on a daily basis. I hear their fears, their struggles. I know the federal government tried to help, but we're all very scared, and people are seeing their dreams disappear. And who's going to champion the business? What solutions are there? Is it enough? I really would love those of you who are able to do stuff to champion those who are losing, their life savings basically during this.
Were you asking me to respond?
If you have any short answer, maybe.
Short answer. When COVID first broke out, we came out with a Save Main Street proposal. That was a proposal that would have given small business owners funding in their hands, 75% rent relief, for goodness sakes, to help them keep focused, keep standing. Rent relief, rent freezes, utility freezes, the whole nine. We were asking Doug Ford to do direct support as opposed to sitting on his hands, looking up at Ottawa and waiting for Justin Trudeau to open his wallet. What he did was he waited for the federal CERB program. He waited for the federal small business program. And as I've said a million times, only 1% of landlords opted in to the federal program. So what that means is the other 99% of business owners, many of whom have shuttered. They've shuttered in St. Paul's, they've shuttered in Toronto Centre, they've shuttered across the province.
My heart.
And this is just, it's not fair. These are taxpayers, they needed their premier. They needed their premier this year more than they've ever needed him. And he decided to say, I'll just wait and see what the feds are up to.
See, I'm going to cheer up talking about this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I mean, there's so much to process with what's being said today. Dr. Abramovich, what do you have to add to this?
I really want to say that I know that we're having this conversation. We're talking about everything that's wrong right now, and that it's not a very happy conversation that we're having, obviously. But yeah. I want to just add in that for myself as an action-oriented researcher, my whole purpose is to work with key decision makers, to work with all levels of government, and to provide the evidence that they require to actually implement real change, policies, strategies. And that is something that I have been doing, with my research. And now, my research has been very much focused on youth homelessness and trans health. But now with COVID, I think that many of us have had to switch gears and look at how can we focus on COVID. And so I just secured funding to start a new project. It's a rapid response project, so it's going to take a course over the next year, where we're going to be conducting online surveys with about 130 LGBTQ2S youth who are experiencing homelessness or at risk. Because one thing we haven't talked about is how many queer and trans youth have been forced back into unsafe and unsupported, abusive homes, family homes, where they are really not safe. And so those are the young people who will take part. They will be interviewed. We're going to collect a lot of data, sort of looking at what are the challenges, how has COVID impacted them, and what are the coping strategies that have been taking place, and as well as how can we make recommendations to public health so that their messaging, their public health messaging is actually directed at youth. Because a lot of the messaging, the public health messaging, is not directed at youth, especially not queer and trans youth.
I'm scheduling my post-quarantine hookup itinerary.
I'm exploring every nook and cranny of self-love.
I'm engaging with online fetish communities I never even knew existed.
I am flattening that curve, honey. Ugh, tighter. Oh, tighter. Ugh.
Tyler!
I just found out I've got HIV. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm scared.
Hey, I know you're scared. I've been living with HIV for 25 years. And with treatment today, I'm living a long, healthy life. You can too.
Maybe I will be okay.
Welcome back, viewers. So today we have discussed the new normal and its challenges by exploring the topics of mental health, body image, women's mental health, trans and sex workers, COVID-19, the eviction bill, so many things. We'd love to hear from you, our viewers, in regards to what was said today. Now, luckily, we had these two amazing guests on the show to clarify and answer some very important questions that also will help organizations like the one I work at, the AIDS Committee of Durham region, as well as the Gay Men's Sexual Health Alliance, to be able to provide better support for our folks. I'm hoping this episode will provide the same for many watching on their personal lives as well as their professional lives. Before we get going, though, there is something I wanted to share. There's a meme that I saw online, and it had a positive impact on me, and I know it had as well on we talked about it. And I do want to share it with everyone that's watching. It says, sometimes I just wanted to stop. Talk of COVID, protests, looting, brutality. I lose my way. I become convinced that this new normal is real life. Then I meet an 87-year-old who talks of living through polio, diphtheria, I think I said that right, no, Vietnam protests, and yet still enchanted with life. He seemed surprised when I said that 2020 must be especially challenging for him. No, he said slowly, looking me straight in the eyes. I learned a long time ago to not see the world through the printed headlines. I see the world through the people that surround me. I see the world with the realization that we love big. Therefore, I just chose to write my own headlines. Husband left wife today. Family drops everything to come to grandma's bedside. He patted my hand. Old man makes new friends. If you at home are watching this and are not crying right now, you're dead inside. No, I'm just kidding. But guests, thank you once again for being with us today, and we're so grateful for your time with us. Your information is golden. Co-hosts, what do you think of our guests?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And shout out to all the parents that have been working so hard and all the families during COVID. And let's keep fighting for a safe start of school for our kids, especially our kids in our communities.
Thank you. Alex, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just thank you so much. This has been really wonderful chatting with you all. And I mean, I know it's cheesy to say that, you know, we're all in this together, but I actually literally do feel like that this is one time that we are sort of, in this together. And I do believe that we're going to get through this together.
Yes. Now, viewers, you can catch the episode online on our Facebook and YouTube pages. The details can be found in the description that will be up. And until then, keep safe, stay diligent, and most importantly, keep being resilient. It's so important. And love from our queer family to yours. To that, we say goodbye.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.